Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome back to Band One Garage. Here, doing just a couple of weekend project. Since you're kind of doing a little bit of work on the J10. So here the last couple of weeks, kind of ignored it a little bit, but finally got back around. I had to put a new hard line on the rear axle for one of the brakes because the essentially I had to replace the brake shoes on the back, replace the brake pads in the front. In the process, I learned on the passenger side, I had a wheel cylinder that just wouldn't retract. So in the process replacing it, the brake line broke, and you know how it is. You have a what you think is going to be a maybe an hour long project turns into a multi-day effort of different nights and everything else along the way. But we finally got that. Also on the way, also put a new choke on the carburetor, so that's actually working properly now. So now you can actually fire it up. Took it for kind of a quick spin around the neighborhood. At least now it kind of goes to the gears. Everything's going pretty good there. I do have a pretty massive oil leak still, so kind of here this weekend working on two projects. The bigger of the two is going to be putting a new valve cover gasket on. That'll hopefully stop the leak essentially, because while this thing is running, I mean it's just essentially a steady stream of oil running out. And with these inline sixes, it's like directly onto the exhaust manifold. So essentially, it's just smoking. Nothing like driving down the road essentially here in the neighborhood and just having smoke kind of bellow out of the cowl. So gonna pull that off, get it replaced, and then on top of that, also putting on essentially what you call a poor man's tailgate. So um, this truck, when I bought it, it did not have the tailgate. So essentially, got the old Arrow net. I think back growing up, I think they joked, "Oh, these will help save your fuel economy." Well, in this case, it just saves maybe $1,000 having to buy a new tailgate. Considering I think I bought this truck for like $1,500, and you go on BJ's off road, their tailgate replacements are like $1,000 or more. Don't really want to spend more on a tailgate than they did the entire truck, right? It's kind of silly. So intent to kind of get this mounted on the back. Hopefully it'll work pretty good. Just an Amazon, uh, you know, solution here. But the intent essentially the tailgate mounting points are still here. Um, Lovely thing is, even back in these days, they were using Torx head bolts, which is just awesome when they get rusty. Um, but yeah, going to essentially take those out and put in eye bolts. So pretty straightforward. Already got this one here kind of loose, showing you. So essentially pull that out, and then just run the replacement in. Goes. Of course, the eye bolts are probably longer than need be, but that was what was available. They are a 5/16 thread, so you can kind of get them in place and then just take a wrench and kind of cinch them down. Make sure they're kind of good and tight there, and then that'll let me have a place to essentially clip in the tailgate, and then kind of quickly disconnect as well for load and unload the back of the truck. Of course, like I said, the Torx bolts. Nothing like dealing with that, because sure enough, I already sheared off the Torx head fastener twice now, actually. Granted, this is a T40, so it's a size I've used pretty often, and it's probably been abused. I mean, this was just kind of a cheap Walmart set or something like that, or whatever, Harbor Freight or something. So they weren't hardened. Not really made for impact gun, so get what you pay for, I guess. But yeah, sure enough, on the top one here, it's kind of sheared off. I was able to kind of grind it back down, get that a little bit back functional again. Kind of zoom in. I ain't got a whole lot left there anymore. But at least after a little bit of a few more ugga duggas, broke that one loose. But then the bottom ones down here were a real booger. Those essentially the heads just stripped out, pretty much no saving that. So tried hitting them with an easy out. Already snapped off one of those. Got actually a pretty good bite with the easy, reverse easy out, but it just never seemed to break. So I didn't really want to break another one of these off, a larger size off than one of these bolts. So the next path is going to go hit it with a little more heat. So it's going to take a 3/8 nut and kind of hold it in, weld it on there. I have hit it with the Aerocrol. I don't know, some can Dad gave me years ago. It's something I had out here in the shop. It's supposedly the oil that creeps. We'll see how well that actually works. Hit it with that several hours ago. Had to take the tail lights out actually on both sides to kind of get back in there and get to these lower bolt locations. So sprayed them up real good. Cleaned off the head, ground the what rust and everything else on it, and then now we're gonna weld on the nut, and we'll see if it'll break free after that. Right now, I just got it set up with a flux core wire, just because I didn't feel like having to. That was what was in the gun, so we're gonna use it. Well, interestingly enough, couldn't get a single nut to stick. So literally just welded on a what do you call it? A stalagmite, stalactite. I don't know. It's not really going up or down. It's just kind of going out. But ultimately just welded on a big old blob of weld sticking kind of straight out, and it actually is turning. Of course, it's going to have to be slow the entire way out. Why couldn't a fella just weld a hex on this, right? Or at least, make it the same round all the way around. All right. So far, a much larger pain than I wanted, but see the resulting, what is it, stalactite, stalagmite, or vice versa? I don't know. Anyway, trash can. Now, let's see if I need to go get a tap to run in here or if this actually threads. All right, one side down. Just enough for that one. A nice cloud of rust dust there coming off. So I think this time I'm just going to start by filling in the head of the bolt, just because it's, with the flathead bolt, so it has what was the Torx star into it. So go ahead and fill that up, and then I'll decide, I guess, real time if I want to put a nut on it and try to do that again, or if I just want to go with the big giant booger weld and see if it'll break loose. All right, we'll go for the rapid cool down method again with the little squirt of water. Kind of thermal shock it. See if that's what I was doing wrong with when I was trying to weld the nuts on. I should have hit him a little bit of water to make it cool off real fast. I don't know. We're about to find out. Yep. Nope. Okay, well, finally got that one. That one I couldn't get a good weld on, but I was able to take a 7/16 drill bit and pretty much go through it and then put an easy out. I actually was able to get that off. Of course, now I have to get this off the easy out, so we'll see how difficult that is. Alright, put the last eye bolt in. Alright, yeah. Not too bad, not too bad. This welding shirt off. Yeah, not perfect, but not the worst. Wouldn't hurt if this was a little bit higher, but that's just where the bolt hole was, and keeps me from having to worry about, I guess, coming in here and trying to drill and get something strong enough that would actually hold that. I guess I could drill it, take the tail lights out and the main housing out, and get your hand in there. But even if you take the lens off, it still has the metal housing in the way, so I don't really want to deal with that. And you can tell essentially this is the side that the tailgate latch bar is actually broken off of. Essentially, it should be essentially an opening here with a kind of a rest of the steel plate kind of out and around it. Somewhere along the lines, I guess that broke, and that's probably why they took the tailgate off, and then the rest is history, because the tailgate's now long gone. Yeah, I mean, not too bad. We'll see how it rides when I actually get out on the road. If it's flopping around too much, I can look to make some changes. I always see if I can shorten up the bungee in some way, shape, or form to kind of tighten it. I only have the bungee cords on the one side, because put it on the other would be even looser. Or maybe if I had some smaller carabiners to actually kind of simulate that, be a little bit tighter. But yeah, not bad. At least that maybe would keep something from totally falling out of the back of the truck if something was rolling around. Yeah, ideally I think it'd probably need to be up there. There's just nothing there to clamp onto. Cross that bridge another day. All right, so let me guess get all my junk cleaned up here, and then I'll get to work on the front end, working on the valve cover gasket. Get cleaned up and see you in a few. All right, hey, we're back to the front of the Jeep. Now we've got the tailgate net all kind of installed. Um, Finished the goal, kind of working towards getting the valve cover off. Seeing, I guess, if I can tell really kind of why that thing's leaking so bad. If it's just due to the nature of, I think that's like a plastic valve cover or something like that. If I'm going to have continued issues, or if it's something that just a new gasket can fix. Doing a little bit of extracurricular work here on the front. I went and pulled the spark plugs out. Um, they do look pretty gross. I mean, not burn off; they're just covered in oil and soot. And there were at least two different types of spark plugs installed in this thing as well. So we'll probably go ahead and run to the store here in a little bit, get some new ones of those. And I guess while I'm at having to tear the top of this thing off a little bit, I'll probably go ahead and pull the old smog pump um, hoses and everything that's on this thing kind of in the process, because the smog pump is totally locked up. I know the belt was on it when I first cranked this thing up, but because the smog pump is totally locked up, it just burnt the belt and slung it off within the first few minutes. So might as well get rid of some complexity and crap essentially that's just going along for the ride with no real value at this point. Figure out, I guess, what I have to do to cap that off. I may have to 3D print me a cover or something just to snap on top of it if I don't have some other type of plug that could just cap off that pump and kind of where that goes into the upper intake section here. Once I get the cover everything off, I'll know a little bit more, a little bit better about that. And I did go ahead and pour some Marvel mystery oil down in the cylinders as well. I mean, I've had this thing running a few times. It's come up and down in temperature, but I figured it's not going to hurt. Maybe it'll help lubricate the rings. And I wasn't sure how much vacuum this thing actually made. But the last time Dad was over here, we were helping getting the brakes bled and everything else, and it actually was actually making vacuum. So that's a good sign. At least I guess that means the cylinders aren't totally shot and the rings and everything aren't totally done. Um, yeah, I guess. So I guess hang with me here while I start disassembling things, and we can try to keep everything somewhat organized so I don't lose it. Kudos to the original Jeep designers, J10 designers back in the day. Probably the same thing on the Wagoneers and the Cherokees. Maybe they knew from the start these things were always going to get worked on, because it's like the tool holders on the fenders and the front core support, little kind of tray areas, kind of keep tools from just rolling off and down into oblivion. That's a pretty nice feature. So kudos to those guys from back in the 70s and 80s. All right, let's get to work. There we go. All right, that off. All right, I've now successfully completed the job before the job. On to the next. That's nice. You can see where I guess the previous folks just used RTV, no gasket, so surprise, it leaked. Right there. Probably some back here as well. I don't know. Looks like the rear ear might have actually broke off. That'll be great. Excellent. It's just fantastic. All right. Well, lovely that they had a bolt hidden all the way in the back. All right. Well, if nothing else, I can at least work on cleaning this up. Do a fair amount of scrubbing to get the oil and everything cleaned off of this. Cleaned off the head here. Have to do a little research and see if you can actually relash these valves. All of them feel pretty good except for the number 2. It's a little on the loose side, not too bad. You probably can't see that from over there. But then also the inside the head looks pretty crusty. Oh, showing a video or a photo here of kind of what that looks like. Get an idea. I guess I could take the shop vac and try to maybe suck some of this junk out of here. Get some of the dirt and crud out of the top of the engine. It's definitely, as expected, a tired old engine. But yeah, all right. Well, let me do a little bit of damage evaluation here. See if this is probably not easily gonna be saved. So, see if I can't save this. What I gotta do to find a replacement. That is my fault for thought everything was out, and clearly I was wrong. So I don't know if a little bit of plastic weld would actually get this to hold together. And it's not like there's a tremendous amount of force on this thing. But first and foremost, I have to go use a can of brake cleaner on the cover, and then come back and start working on inside the engines. All right, gonna pause the video here. We'll bring you back when we get a little bit further along. All right, hey everyone, back here a couple days later. Ultimately, this project kind of grew fangs a little bit on me. Ended up having to go buy a new valve cover, and then that came with a new valve cover gasket and everything. It's kind of showed you some of the photos. The top end of this thing was pretty gunky. I have some before and after photos, kind of show kind of what it looked like versus what it kind of finished up as after it kind of scraped and vacuumed, and tried to clean the top end out as good as I could without then dislodging a bunch of stuff that may fall down into the motor. Um, Getting the new valve cover on wasn't quite exactly a totally factory replacement. I'm sure it's probably valve covers probably for all different types of years. I guess some of them actually have different bolts in the top essentially that essentially are used to hold it down. This one just has the periphery hardware, and then I don't know if you can kind of see it in the video, but they actually have these little kind of notches, so the bolts don't actually go on the driver's side don't actually go through the valve cover. They just have this essentially large kind of nuts that go and are supposed to press down. But in the process, they tend to kind of want to push the valve cover in and actually don't compress. So it's a bit of look like I had some old hardware for some 5/8 bolts that were actually like the perfect size. They tend to kind of fit that contour of the valve cover. So I was able to put these up under those larger nuts and actually get some good clamp load down, and then had some new 1/4 20 hardware to put on the passenger side just to kind of hold it down. But yeah, I got the new valve cover on, got the new spark plugs in, got everything routed, rerouted some vacuum lines. Still got to put the breather back on for like a couple of these, but tried to clean up some of the vacuum lines and things and kind of cap off different things from the old smog pump that was locked up, and put all that junk off just to not have to deal with it anymore. Won't get in the way. But like I said, this project now is kind of grew fangs. So next step is going to be pulling the oil pan. I'm probably going to head and do a new rear main seal at the same time. This thing has a bit of a leak in the back. It may have been because of that valve cover at the back, just wasn't sealed up good where it was, when I broke all the other hardware loose, it was still connected back there, but it wasn't really connected very well. So I don't know if that valve cover was actually already cracked or if I broke it when I pulled it off. I don't know. Well, no, never know. But here we are. So yeah, thanks for joining me on this kind of quick update here. Uh, didn't get it. Unfortunately, didn't get it running again because I kind of want to get the bottom end pulled off and everything before I actually crank it back up. Talking to Dad, he thinks maybe that the oil strainer maybe kind of clogged up with some of that gunk and buildup. So better to go ahead and replace that. That'll resolve hopefully some of the oil pressure is a little bit slow on this thing to come up when you crank it. So maybe if I clean that gunk out of the bottom, maybe it'll be a little bit better. So what I think I'm going to do is actually go ahead and break this into two separate videos because this project is the one that keeps on giving. And so now I'm going to need to go pull the oil pan, and ultimately that'll lead to a lot more work. So I'm probably going to break this into two parts. So we're going to end this first one here. So Kevin here from Band One Garage, thanks as always for joining me. Kind of checking out the progress on the J10 here. And we will catch you on the next one. If hopefully, if it's something that you are interested in, please like and subscribe. Provide any comments, questions you got along the way. And we will see you again soon. Thanks.